So
yeah.
So we are live on YouTube, and I'm delighted to be joined this morning by Vanya Lambrecht Ward. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Stuart. How are you?
I'm fine. Yeah, it's a nice morning here in Manor Hamilton in Leitrim. Where in the world are you?
I'm in Sligo town in the studio. So
Excellent.
not at home, but yeah, not far from home.
So this is the studio where you do all your work, yeah?
This is where it happens. Yeah. Well,
where...
to say all the work happens here is a lie, because I do a lot from home as well if I'm not here. And then I spend an awful lot of time in the woods, which I kind of consider part of my studio. So
okay, yeah, that's fair enough. We'll get into why you're in the woods, lost in the woods. For those that don't know you, I always start this question: how would you describe what you do?
Oh my God! No,
it's the big one.
How do to really simplify it, I suppose I would say I do a bit of everything. I have a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, but I suppose that all stems from an insatiable curiosity. So the curiosity could be about a material, curiosity could be about a particular thing or subject matter, but it could also be the technique that draws me, you know. So there's, yeah, it's a real mix. Yeah, but okay. mostly visual. Let's put it that way.
Okay, so you're a bit of a magpie when it comes to sort of, picking and the shiny objects that interest you.
Yeah, but also the shiny nuggets of information. So, it doesn't have to be physical, or it doesn't have to be even that shiny. Actually, the grotty is better.
Dirty and messy.
Yes, and the things that get left behind and the things that get discarded, and yeah.
Okay.
That kind of, yeah.
That's good. That's interesting.
So, sorry.
I was gonna say you're a bit like myself. Not a native Irish person. You're from Holland originally. Where in Holland are you?
The Hague. So, but
all right. There you go.
I'm here 27 years. So.
Oh,
I've earned my stripes. Surely.
I was gonna say you just beat me. I think I'm around 25 years here. So yeah.
Yeah,
half a lifetime.
Well, more than half a lifetime for me, thanks.
Yeah. Well, there you go. What was it that kind of drew you over here? Was it sort of working or studying or?
No, none. Needed to get out of Dodge, as they say.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, kind of finished school. Wasn't interested in going straight into college. And I would nearly say that to my students as well. It's good to kind of get away from all that for a little bit, work, and come back and see what you actually. Although I had kind of specific ideas of what I wanted to do, but I wasn't in the headspace for it. So I came to visit a relative and stayed. I had a one-way ticket. And that's it. Couldn't afford a two-way ticket. No. And I ended up working in Clare Island for 2 years. So that's kind of how I got, I wouldn't say stuck, but how I kind of got, busy.
Because you were saying to me, something I didn't know about you is you used to do hand weaving when you first kind of.
Yeah, so that's what I did there for 2 years. So first as an apprentice for about 6 months, and then for another year and a half after that as a full-time 60 hours a week hand weaving.
Wow.
And tailoring. So I would have done quite a bit of sewing. So my schooling, I went to Steiner School, so in Holland, and not as private a school as here. It's not all that posh.
No.
but so we would have done a huge amount of making throughout all our schooling. So the leap from that to becoming a tailor, you know, we used to make wedding dresses and christening gown and like really, really, really delicate silk stuff. So yeah, and hand weaving is a very delicate operation, especially if you're doing silks and linens. And so we would have only worked with kind of natural fiber.
Wow, excellent.
All our own, spun our own wool, dyed our own wool, carting, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it was
Wow.
full blown.
And after that, did you have you kind of used some of those skills sort of throughout your,
Yes,
or
no, maybe not as directly.
yeah,
Like, although I do still use a lot of sewing, but there's something about the precision and the methods, or the being really methodical about things, that really plays still a part of it. And as I said, I don't come back to it literally, but I do come back to it in terms of a formative training, in terms of how I work, how I approach things, and kind of and maybe also what I'm drawn to. So yeah, I always find myself working with threads of sorts, again and again, or like particularly patterns in hand weaving. They're really about counting and maths and geometry, even though it's obviously flat.
Yeah.
But it is very much about kind of like what patterns can you create on the loom that then express themselves in the weaving, you know. So
absolutely
fascinating. Yeah,
and I think it's interesting you mentioned geometry and patterns, because that definitely ties into one of the projects that you did with this, the fold unfold project. Do you want to talk a bit about that? By the way, all this stuff is up on Vanya's lovely website that
needs work.
that needs work. Vanya, just search Vanya Lambrecht WordPress and you'll find it. So fold on fold. That's interesting. That's kind of how. Well, I think that's one of the first things I actually saw of yours.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. That's kind of like someone sort of introduced me, saying, "Oh, I think you'll like, what's going on here." Go on. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, that actually came. It was kind of in tandem with another project I was doing. There was an exhibition I did in Belfast with a sound artist called Rachel Nichwin, and I made these sculptural paper pieces that she put sound in. So actually, I have one of them here.
Oh, look at that!
A series of, so these are component origami. So there's no glue.
Right.
And actually, so there's this, like I made, like this is tracing paper. And I suppose what I like to do is when I work with origami in particular, or any kind of folding, I do it the right way for a little while, and then I get bored, and then I start bastardizing it. This is not the way to do it. This is how it should look. This is what I do with it.
Right.
Because it becomes a sculptural material, and I love the way this really simple material and really simple methods add up to something else. So a bit like the weaving, I suppose, like you have all these lines, but how you work with them or how you interpret them is what ultimately makes different patterns or different visuals. Again, as I said, these are components. I'm actually going to take this apart. So
oh my god, look at that.
I know. It's okay, I know how to put it back. So it comes in this kind of shape, as in that's after 12 folds.
Right, okay.
And then 56 of these make one of these.
Oh my word. Wow.
And this one in particular has a lovely detail with an extra fold so that you have these kind of flower, or
flower-like kind of, sort of very
or I think of them as crustaceans. You know the way you get the rock, and they, like they have the mouths coming out. So it then comes apart. This is actually a lovely waxed paper. So it's actually
it's got a real shine to it. That absolutely.
It came from the recycling center. I think
Wow.
it's used for wood, so it's brown on one side.
All right.
And black and shiny on the other. Yeah,
oh,
it's incredible. And yeah, I'm, like you already pointed out, I'm a bit of a magpie and a bit of a hoarder. But it's I suppose it comes from.
So when you're constructing or thinking about constructing these objects, is it sort of like the meditative process of putting them together that you're thinking about on trying to convey, or is it some kind of like biomimicry of sort of like natural forms, or what are you trying to do with it?
The meditative element is a huge part of it, as in I really enjoy doing quite precise things with my hands. But then after that, having that down, the technique and understanding how something goes together, like I said, and then the play comes back into it. And it's not so much biomimicry, but in this particular case, it was more about creating spaces, in particular for sound for Rachel.
Okay.
And the Fold Unfold exhibition that you would be familiar with was commissioned by the Linen Hall and the Riverbank in Newbridge, which would have been more an educational kind of element. So how do we, because I'm also quite interested in how we learn. So understanding it on a mathematical level isn't that interesting to me,
right. Okay.
Remind me of that.
I was going to say, is it that kind of like nerdy maths geometry thing, or is it more just?
It's more body knowing. It's more
it's
a
more
physical understanding. And really getting it, because you really do get things on a very different level rather than here. It's nearly as if my hands are smarter than my head.
Yeah. No, absolutely,
And I really enjoy that, as in, because you might not have the language to talk about that or what that, but you have, it's an instinct. Then it becomes instinctual, and that's actually when you are, in my mind, really part of the work where you can start kind of expressing it in it. And for the complex things like weaving and folding like this, you really do need to have, it's nearly like a training, or like an athlete, like, so that you can then let go of the
it's building up that muscle memory.
Yeah. And I suppose what has, in terms of the content, like, yes, biomimicry, in the sense that I am very interested in shapes in nature, but I'm also very aware that not everything in nature is as organized as we like to think. That it's much more about the chaos.
The chaos
versus and this is where for me it got interesting in terms of what that could mean. Then how do things get distorted? How does a flower, first look like this, and after 300 years of evolution look like that, and so on. And it doesn't have to be a flower. So how do things evolve then?
And I guess that sort of like idea about like looking at nature has definitely come a lot more into your work. And it's time to talk about the woods. And why you go into the woods. A lot of your practice is on mycology or fungus or fungi. And what is the correct one? Is it funguses or is it fungi? Like
well, it's actually funga, as in
funga.
Flora, fauna, funga. It should be one of the three. That's my first lesson.
There we go. Okay, that's that nugget of information.
Fungi. I swing between both fungi
Right.
and fungi. And then sometimes I say mushrooms, but only if I'm talking about fruiting bodies. And then other times it's mycelium, and other times it's mycology, and other times it's hyphae. And so there's all these, you know, depending on what kind of level of detail or what angle I'm talking about. But yeah, it's everything fungal. And when you say that, people go, ew, you know?
Ooh. The stuff growing between my toes.
Yes, exactly.
So where did this interest in mycology come from, and how has that led in? You did a project with the doc, Myco Thoughts, which generated a really interesting
Paperwork.
Paperwork. Holds copy up to camera. Yes, that's the one. Exactly. Yeah,
And it really
beautiful.
You really need to see that.
Yeah, exactly. It's beautifully illustrated. It really is lovely. Yeah.
And that's the way you're supposed to read it, upside down and inside out.
Upside down and inside out, and turn it around each way. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a piece of origami in itself.
Yes.
So where did this interest in it come from? Was it literally just sort of like out walking in the woods one day and saw something and went, wow, that's incredible?
No, I suppose this is the thing. It kind of grew out of some of the things I mentioned in terms of how do things evolve. My practice before, you know, so say you had hand weaving, then I was in theatre for a decade as a theatre designer. And then I suppose working with books a lot, working with origami and folding, and kind of this idea of thinking around systems. So I was working in Leitrim County Council on the Sparks project in the council. And there was a lot of the research that came out of that, and a lot of the conversations were around systems, but kind of, I suppose, more economic systems, political systems. But I suppose being in the woods all the time anyway, because I live beside the woods, and you know, I have dogs, and you know, I kind of end up spending a lot of time out and about. I would have always been very interested in ecosystems, how we form part of that, what part we play in that, and so in a way I kind of came at it from a slightly awkward angle, in the sense that I was really deeply engrossed in system thinking, and that also includes computers thinking and, you know, cybernetics and stuff like that. Not that I know that I'm not a total nerd. Not that that's a. I would love to be.
It's okay.
A nerd, but
nerds of the world unite.
I get out too much to be a nerd. And so the thinking about ecologies in a bigger sense of the word, and how they interact, how some systems are closed, how some systems are wide open and highly influenced by each other, really got me thinking about, you know, how plants interact, but then obviously fungi are a huge part of it. And actually, if anything, they are the system.
They are the system.
Without we wouldn't be here. That is not just some kind of throwaway comment. That is, it's fundamental.
It's taken a long time, but it's now been scientifically proved. Suzanne Simard, a Canadian botanist, basically has proven that basically there is this internet of trees, and that the fungal networks tie all of the ecology in all the woodlands together, and that's kind of fact now. So
absolutely, and not just it's not just the trees. Actually, 90% of plants, or 85-90% of all plant life, need fungi in order to. You know, no more than our systems need fungi in order to digest. You know, we have, I don't know how many, depends on how healthy you eat.
Yeah.
In terms of your microbiome and, you know, the combination of bacteria, microbes, and fungi in your system is essential. And a lot of theory is coming out now about how we as humans have been able to create consciousness around things, which fungi, you know, if not that I have a huge wealth of knowledge around psilocybins, but in terms of development, you know, from a very, very early human development in terms of consciousness and, you know, creativity and language and all of that makes us, you know, think that we're different than everybody else. In the more than human world. It's a huge, it's I suppose what excites me so much, and this is, you know, you can get the next 20 minutes of an earful of mushrooms. What excites me so much is that we know so little.
Yeah.
Which means that I'm also quite protective over, but it also means that we can do things differently than we did before, you know. And I mean that in terms of kind of everything, like how we treat them, you know, compared to, say, the animal kingdom, how we look after them, you know, by not knowing, instead of pretending that we can't see them, we should actually even be more interested in protecting what we don't know, because we don't know what we're losing when we're destroying things. Or, you know, and because they're so elusive, it's even harder. But so there's this
literally hidden under the ground a lot of the time.
In everything, like literally in everything, in paper, obviously. This actually is some mushroom paper.
So explain how that came to be.
And it smells lovely too.
If only we had smell-o-vision.
Yeah. I found this huge dryad saddle, which is a bracket mushroom or bracket fungus that grows off a tree, not off a stump.
They're the ones that look like sort of like half domes that kind of come out from
now there's
tree,
there's a good few bracket mushrooms, or shelf mushrooms, or polypores, or whatever. Not all bracket mushrooms are polypores, by the way. But versus this kind of mushroom.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm collecting these, so if anybody has any, send them on. There's a project in the making. So they're darning mushrooms.
Yeah.
We're going back full circle to the zone.
We are, exactly. It all ties in. Yeah. Come on, tell us about the paper.
So the dryad saddle is edible when it's young, but to be honest, I'm not, like, I love eating mushrooms, but I'm not that interested in whether they're edible.
Culinary aspect.
I'm interested in, you know, the tiniest one to the ugliest ones, or the really slimy, yucky ones.
Everybody check out Vanya's Instagram for lovely pictures of slimy mushrooms. Some
people have turned off my feed because it gets too much at times, especially this time of the year. Actually, it gets quite overwhelming.
This is the perfect time of the year.
But this dryad saddle was huge. And at some stage of their lifespan, they become very woody. They literally become like the wood, you know. So it was coming off the tree anyway, so it got harvested, and I then mulched it in the blender, and then you scoop it like paper, like any other. And it's really, it's incredible.
Wow.
Like, and I'm not, my practice is not all about the material and making. You know, there's other people that have incredible practices around kind of packaging materials or mushroom leathers. There's mushroom coffins, and fantastic guy in Holland who has built these beautiful yeah, it's like polystyrene in a way. Like they're
Yeah, I know.
the
Yeah,
mycelia just,
just yeah, expand. Yeah, it's
yeah,
like expanded foam. Yeah.
yeah. So
Mm.
and it's amazing material, but the beauty with those coffins is obviously that you literally go back to the earth with the mushrooms.
Yeah.
But there's other ways of inoculating materials, to help decompose stuff. Like they're incredible cleaners, or converters. I like decomposers,
Yeah.
composters, digesters, whatever you want to call them. So I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
also really interested in how that plays. So a lot of the work I'm doing at the moment is making holes and stuff.
Making
But
holes
actually,
and stuff.
yeah,
Explain.
that's what they do. So I'm kind of mimicking, like speaking of biomimicry, I
Yeah.
am
Yeah. Yeah.
mimicking the mushroom. So I'm kind of looking at how to draw through hole making as opposed to adding and subtracting. So there's this
Okay.
because they digest outwardly and we digest inwardly. So and that's really the biggest difference. We are closer cousins to mushrooms than we are to plants. So we
Right.
are
Okay.
we're only one step removed. Like so the plant forked off here and the mushroom and
Okay. So we're
animalia forked off together on the tree of life. Yeah, we're we're very close.
wow. One
um,
1 degree of mushroom.
yeah. Well, and this is the thing. Like really, when and I know I sound like a complete evangelist. um, but that's the thing. Like I suppose I'm so immersed in all of
Yeah.
that at the moment. But the beauty
So
is that it comes back in everything. Like so, it's
so
really easy to
are
tap in.
you interested then in like the taxonomy kind of idea? Is it the recording of this as a method of sort of like investigating and researching? Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
part of it. So there's one I found this morning that I'd forgotten to bag. It's a dried puffball.
Puffball. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
My son loves finding those in the forest so that he can stamp on them and have the
yeah, be
spores
covered
shoot
in.
up in the air.
Yeah, and he'd be
Yeah.
covered in spores. But this,
Yeah.
and there's this kind of lovely interaction where you actually then help disperse the spores, and
Yeah.
the whole reason why they come up as mushrooms is to look for new food. This is their way of being able
Yeah.
to move. And there is other theories. Some mushrooms prefer other ways of kind of spreading themselves, like an ink cap or a shaggy ink cap, for instance, will literally melt back into the soil. Others need to be digested through animals and basically being pooped out the other side of the woods and then come up. And,
Yeah.
there's 100 million
ways.
different ways, because really when we think about mushrooms, we tend to think about the
stuff you get in Tesco. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other
Yeah.
thing.
Don't get
Yeah.
started. Yeah. Fair enough.
It's the biggest agricultural export crop in Ireland.
In Ireland, mushrooms.
It's
Yeah.
it's a very moist environment, so it's like, and it's humid.
Exactly. It's the perfect humid,
Yeah, it's perfect.
wet, rubbish, rubbish weather.
Yeah.
Perfect for growing mushrooms.
But yes, the taxonomy does play into it. So I do collect, but not, as I said, not particularly to eat. Although I do only the ones that I'm, but not in that kind of way per se.
Yeah.
And I have, so I have a dehumidifier, or like a dehydrator that I use then to dry them, and I label and name, and, keep track. And I use Naturalists as well to.
I was going to say, that's another thing that I found out about recently was iNaturalist. Fantastic
amazing,
website that anyone can kind of join up. Yeah, and an app that anyone can join up for, and start basically citizen science, capturing
absolutely,
information about their. but also it's full of experts as well
Yeah, well, this
that
is
kind
the
of like
thing.
verify and validate the
Exactly.
data.
Yeah, and that's a
Yeah.
huge part, because and in all fairness, you can't really identify mushrooms fully just through photographs. It's just not it's not the best practice, but for one for lack of good experts to hand, and you can't always send samples, and by the time you send the samples, they've gone off, or if you dry them, they distort. So, and some mushrooms don't like to be recognized until you've done a DNA sequencing on them. So
wow.
you can't, you can't say for sure, okay, this is such and such, because it could be a false something, or it could be a lookalike, or it could be a new one. So there's all of that. And in some ways, citizen science, or like really kind of pseudoscience, what I'm doing, it's really not necessarily, but it helps in terms of how I learn to understand them and approach them in my own way. Even knowing their names, I sometimes like to, I know this sounds maybe strange, but I like not to know their names. I like to get to know them first, and then kind of get, because the taxonomy sometimes can be quite negative.
Yeah, okay.
Their naming.
You see something that looks absolutely beautiful, and then it's a horned devil something or the other, and you go...
Yeah, most of them are like destroying angels, or like, something dead, death cat, or smelly this and that.
Now, like looking through your Instagram, like, is the photography part of it sort of like very important? Like capturing a great image, and again, is that a kind of cataloging process that you're building up like a library of images? I mean, some of these fungi, they're absolutely beautiful. The colors on them are absolutely amazing, sort of rich reds and greens and blues, purples, sometimes even. Absolutely. Again, is it kind of that you're looking for the kind of like the kind of the natural art in nature there as well, that you can kind of like bring in to what you're doing?
And again, it's like nearly like portraiture. It's trying to figure out who they are in a softer approach, in a less kind of hard knowledge. Oh, I know what they're made of, so therefore I know who they are. You don't, because it's about their action. It's how they travel through the world. It's what they actually do and what they contribute. Like some of them are part of lichen, so lichen being an amalgamation of algae and fungi. So for instance, this long
oh wow,
just even looking at those folds, it's just back to paper and back to folding.
Absolutely. I was going to say that does look like one of your paper folds.
And just, I suppose, like really gently, and this is going to be a really long process. Like this is going to be basically the rest of my life, I'd say, of trying to get to know them in a not so clinical and in a way often dismissive. Oh, well, if this is not edible, it's no interest to us. Why is that our deciding factor? If we can't make something from it, or if we can't eat it, or if it's not medicinal, so for me it's more about kind of recognizing the potential and the kind of the things that we dismiss. And I think that needs time and gentle kind of getting to know them, and I know I keep saying that, but that's ultimately what I'm trying to do, so that it's true photography, true samples. I have a lot of dried, so these were dried and pulverized samples. What's that one? Oh, that's a brittle gill. But these were ones that didn't make the fungarium, which is basically a fancy name for a mushroom collection, a dried mushroom.
Okay.
These
Right,
went
okay.
moldy because
Oh, right, okay.
we live in Ireland, and I was only, I hadn't
Yeah.
had the dehumidifier on for long enough, or the dehydrator on, and these went moldy, which I think is a lovely.
Yeah. Surely
Um,
that's what they are.
yeah. So they are going to be used for. Let me see if I can. So I have this other paperweight. So at the moment I'm doing a project in a woods in Dromahair as well to look at soil health, which obviously is hugely tied in with the mycelial life inside the soil. So we are doing these.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that is amazing. What is that?
So it's called chromatography.
Ah, okay.
So it's basically it's used in science a lot.
Yeah, so it's the way you extract, like, elements out of.
So you get soil, you dry it, you pulverize it, you make it into a solution with caustic soda, then
your mushroom paper folder.
Then with silver nitrate, so a paper, so the paper, this is a dud, because it got out, and basically it's photosensitive. Once you've treated the paper with
silver nitrate, exactly. That's what the old, photo.
Exactly, darkroom stuff, and then you again put the wick back in, and it draws those pictures.
Wow!
Literally draws a picture of the soil. So I'm in the process of doing the same. So I have like petri dishes, there's scales, there's gloves. This is like a really bad.
I love the fact that an art studio essentially can be like a school science lab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, remember I said about the insatiable curiosity?
Yeah, exactly.
It can be anything, and at the same time, like the sewing machine is out, and like there's 100 other things that come because they're all part of it. Like I said, the sewing, the darning, bookmaking is, I suppose, like if you were to ask me, well, what is all this going to lead to? I don't know if that's what you were going to ask, but I'm going to anticipate.
What is all this going to lead to, Vanya?
So the mycotox, the work I did for the doc recently, was like a snippet. So there's 20 titles in the process at the moment. And they're all fungi related, but they're also about storytelling, and in a way myth making, because there isn't, well, there is and there isn't much culture, particularly in Ireland, around our relationship with fungi. So how do we create that? And that takes as many forms as there is mushrooms. So that's why, the photographs play a part in that. So, sometimes digital technology, sometimes I do quite a lot of digital drawing. So actually quite a few of these are digital. Some of these are done with mushroom inks. But the beauty with digital drawing is that you can zoom in to such minuscule levels that you just can't do with the human eye, which is, very apt for that kind of work. And then, things like projecting and working back into it, animation, and again, using basically everything, like that could be text, that could be drawing, it could be physical things, it could be folding, it could be so.
But ultimately, your goal here is to create a book or a series of books on these kind of like themes and subjects,
on these kind of observations and discoveries. It's not, as I said, it's not going to be a book on mushrooms. It's much more, I kind of thought about it the other day. It's like, well, how would I describe myself? I suppose I'm a cultural mycologist. I don't do mycology in the good way. I do it in the kind of the fluffy way. But actually, if you come across any mycologists, they all tend to be like that. I don't know if you've heard of this amazing, hold on, it's really heavy.
Oh, radical mycology.
So it's that thick. It's about
Wow.
1,300 pages with, lots of markers.
Lots of markers there.
Yeah, Peter McCoy is a lifetime's work. It does everything from the science to how to grow your own, how to dry, how to make paper, it's really, really, it's the most comprehensive mycology book out there. Otherwise you end up buying lots of different books. This one has basically everything. It even has games in the back of it. And funnily enough, I was at a gaming test online just because I typed in fungi, and I was looking for events because I go to lots of fungal society kind of group meetings and stuff like that. Again, like as a kind of the odd one out, because everybody knows
yeah.
And I don't. But yeah, this one was on. They were trying to create a game, like a Monopoly kind of. So around fungi, and it was really interesting because it was really, the emphasis tended to be really towards like the poison and the detriment of a mushroom. And I was like, whoa.
Whoa.
I was there to advocate on their behalf.
Yeah.
What about all the good stuff that they do?
All the good
all
stuff.
The potential. Yeah. So it really changed how wide the game could be.
Yeah.
I suppose if you think about it in terms of animal terms, because that's something we're more familiar with, it's like, or plant, we tend to kind of go, okay, oh, nettles, oh, they're stingy. They're also make incredible soup.
Incredible.
And
tea, and you can
we
use
know
them.
how good they are for the soil when you make a tea out of them and give it to the plants. And, it's just so it's that kind of thinking.
Yeah.
We need to that I'd like to help.
Positive mycology.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now listen.
Yes.
I don't want to keep you too long, and I do want to talk about a couple of other things. So let's talk shop.
Oh, shop talk.
Yes, let's talk shop.
That's
obviously a lot of what you do. I mean, you're aside from all the mycology stuff, you actually lecture full time in the ATU on theatre design, and theatre obviously is a big part of what you do in your life, and architecture and sort of like sort of constructed environments, let's call it that way. Vanya, have you? Oh no, you're still there. Okay, sorry. The screen froze for a second there.
Yeah.
So talk to me about Shop Talk and where that idea came from.
That was a Heritage Week project with Leitrim Council again. They photographs that they've been working on, that they had in the archive, that they commissioned somebody to do, that they wanted to do something with, but more than just an exhibition. And I suppose with my background in architecture, my interest in kind of how we develop. So I'm not, although I have designed stuff, I'm not that interested in kind of straightforward architecture. I'm more interested in how we use the things that are already there, or how we can, develop things or appreciate the things that are there. So one of those things was part of this in terms of appreciating the shop fronts, in particular in Leitrim, and how big a deal shops really were. And I suppose, especially now that we're online shopping so much, a lot of that social contact and how we interact with each other, and COVID has put another spanner in the work, and that this project was before COVID, so it's a whole different question in a way.
Oh no, yeah.
So that was one element of it. We did a series of talks, we had a library, we had the exhibition, we had activities in the shop. So I had a shop in Carrick for about 2 weeks, where people could come and visit and basically shop talk.
Yeah.
About kind of their experience, growing up, and people brought in photographs of Carrick when their parents had shops, and also in terms of the emancipation of women, and like as shopkeepers was incredible. Like most women weren't able to work in, or once they had kids, they were, let go, and or couldn't, for instance, in the public sector, you had to give up your job. So there was a lot of really interesting conversation that grew from that. So I collected. This is a huge part of my practice, is hoarding and collecting. I collected those, and actually, you know what? It's not always about kind of writing things down and putting things in a form. Sometimes actually the act of talking is really powerful, just in and of itself. Or listening in my case. So not that I've done a lot of that today, but
no, you're here to talk, it's fine.
So yeah, even though in some ways it sits kind of sideways, it is like those kind of projects. The same with the Sparks, the workstation project, which was mostly about listening and kind of being in a way a conduit of those ideas and then putting it out in another way. But also, it was also about the physical and the visual. So we talked a lot about lettering, and we had a sign writer in, and we had some stenciling things that you cut out with the lovely laser cutter. And so there's always, it's about how do you instigate conversation as well. So sometimes people talk much better when they're doing something with their hands.
Absolutely, it's that's sort of like community thing. Interestingly enough, that shop that you were in, I know, is earmarked to be turned into like a community art workshop. So it's that's going to be a really interesting space where they're going to kind of carry on this idea of like community art and bringing it kind of onto the high street essentially, because it is literally on Carrick High Street. Carrick on Shannon.
Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. And I have to say, like it's a great spot for that, in terms of even like, and I like the idea that it's continuing that conversation in a different way. And I have to say, Leitrim County Council are very good at that compared to some other councils. I'm not mentioning names.
No, please don't.
But they are, like, in terms of kind of seeing potential in not just the physical things, but also in how do you, because these things don't come out of nothing,
No, exactly. It's about the conversations. Exactly. Last question before I let you go. Your theatre design work, like I know that you do a lot of digital, like you say, you do a lot of digital drawing in what you do. How, I have to ask this, being as I'm in a fab lab and we're all about trying to get people using more digital technologies. What is your relationship like with digital technology? How do you use it, and what where do you see it going in the future for you?
I use kind of anything and everything I can get my hands on. Sometimes it comes from using something, kind of go, oh, that could be really handy for such and such, but it often is the other way, where I kind of go, I really need to do something like this. For instance, as part of the workstation, I ended up buying a 3D drawing tool because I really needed to draw in the third dimension. Paper just wasn't doing it. And digital drawing was, I needed to draw in space. So, needs must. So quite often, I go looking for something that does what I needed to do in order to respond to the material that I have, or the information I have in front of me. But sometimes it's the other way around. And again, the curiosity of kind of trying to figure out how to do things and make things. And I am very interested in cutting and molding, and like, I suppose with my students, we do laser cutting, and because we make a lot of models. But I also get them to make them from scratch.
Absolutely, they have to learn.
Yes, but and it's not about shortcuts, and it's not. I'm not. For me, technology is just another tool. It's not like it's not one medium.
Yeah,
Like I invest as much in my handmade kind of elements as I do in my technical ones. But there's just certain ones, like I said, with the digital drawing,
yeah,
there's no way I could zoom in. Okay, unless I get, a jeweler's eye and a super magnifying.
yeah,
Even just dexterity isn't always there. And like I really do appreciate the things that we can do with technology, but at the same time, there is a lot of things that we can't do with technology that we still need these for. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it's a lovely back and forth. And I think there's some amazing stuff like we do a lot of projection, and we do some we use a program called Man Mapper where we map projections onto surfaces. So really working in the 3D with
Wow.
projecting, which has incredible potential, particularly in theatre
Yeah,
or
yeah, absolutely.
any kind of events. But it is also interesting in terms of drawing and kind of animating on top of things, and kind of how do you play with the space? So
Yeah,
it ties back into how I approach spaces and architecture, but it also, I suppose that's what my work is now. So that's, I'm just trying to think I use a lot of apps. I use a lot of digital media, I suppose, just the nature of it. I teach digital media as well. So I'm the newest one would be to draw in video. No, but
you
it's
mean
nearly
like,
like sewing. I sew into things that aren't supposed to be sewn into. So I kind of see drawing and sewing is very similar. And yeah.
okay, that's interesting. That's great. Listen, where can people find out about your work? We've mentioned you have a WordPress site.
Instagram
Vanya
is
Lambrecht,
probably the most up to date.
yeah, and
Um,
then Instagram as well.
yeah. So
Those two places.
yeah. And then I suppose keep an eye out for any books.
Yeah, and are these going to be books that you're hoping to sort of like publish a kind of short run of, or sort of self-publish, or yeah?
Yeah, short runs, limited edition kind of stuff. I'm not as interested in hanging on a gallery wall. I really like the I suppose the accessibility of books or paper
Mm,
works.
yeah,
Paper as a democratic medium anyway, like remote. If you don't have access to it, you can nearly make it yourself. So I really
yeah,
love that as a material. So it seems really fitting.
yeah, yeah.
But
That's
there'd be short runs, and it might just be one every year or every 2 years from now on. Like it
for
won't
the
be.
rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay,
I'm not making any promises.
okay, fair enough. Okay, well, we'll definitely keep an eye out for those. Listen, Vanya, thanks a million for coming on today and having this chat with us. Yeah, good luck with all the things you do, and here's hoping for some nice walks in the woods in the autumn, and
Yeah. Actually, we
lots,
need
lots.
some rain because those mushrooms are not coming up in this dry weather. So
Well, it's just started raining here in Manhamilton, so
excellent.
just hang around. There's always rain on the way. Okay.
Thanks.